now speaking with these fantastic guys from IFL Science. Is that right?
That is right.
I just discovered what it meant. I mean, I thought IFL was something very technical. Apparently what it actually means is I love science.
Wow.
And so now it all makes sense, right? So if you love science, if you friggin' love science, you're going to love this. And I've just followed them on Instagram. IFL Science is on Instagram. So I'm going to tag them, and you're going to be able to find them anytime, and you're going to be able to see what they transmit from what we did today. We love these guys, all right? We IFL these guys.
Thank you.
WFL these guys.
And obviously with IFL, you as well, and the book.
Brilliant. He loves the book. I'm so happy you do.
That's great.
Right, to business.
All right, to business. We're going to film a little intro by yourself later, so we don't take too much of your time. So, just gonna start with thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us about Bennu 3D, Anatomy of an Asteroid. A first question to ask both of you would be like how this collaboration started. Can you tell us a little bit about how you ended up working on the book?
Sure, I'll begin. I'm Dante Loretta. I'm the principal investigator of the OSIRIS-REx mission, which is a NASA-funded program to send a spacecraft to a near-Earth asteroid named Bennu and collect a sample to bring back to our planet for analysis in our laboratories. We launched in 2016, and I think that's when I was first introduced to Brian by a mutual colleague. We're both co-signers for an organization called Asteroid Day, which is a United Nations sanctioned event to raise awareness of asteroid science, the asteroid impact hazard, and I thought, hey, cool, I'm talking to a childhood hero. I was a huge fan of Brian's music when I was a kid, still am today, and I thought it was actually fake at the beginning. I thought I was being, punked or whatever, that this couldn't be really the real Brian May. And I said, oh, thanks for the warm wishes and the successful journey. And then sure enough, as soon as we started returning data from the mission of images of asteroid Bennu, I got another message from Brian. He said, hey, we see what you're putting out there on the internet. What do you think of a stereo view? And it really changed my whole perspective of the data. I was like, all of a sudden, a new dimension opened up. We're looking at Bennu in 3D, and when you take the book and you browse through the images, you can really see how much more information is contained in a stereo image compared to a monochromatic image. And I thought, well, he's a busy guy, he's probably having a bit of fun, but there's no way that he's going to want to get involved in the team. But I knew the value of the science was enormous, so I said, we're really struggling, Brian, with our site selection. We had to find a safe location to collect the sample, and there was nothing that was obvious when we first arrived there. So I said, would you mind giving us a 3D view of these coordinates? And I think the next day it was in my inbox, and I was like, and he sent me a really nice message saying how much it meant to him to be part of a program like this, and that he really wanted to help. And I said, well, let me see if he means it. And I think I sent you a dozen coordinates or something like that. And then over the next week, they all started coming back. Unfortunately, none of them looked like the site, and I was like, Brian, we're going to need a little more, and then a little more, and sure enough, he and his collaborator, Claudia Manzoni, who they worked really together to produce these stereo images, just delivered. And it became, I think even at one point, Brian was like, I feel like we're making a book, and I was like, well, I'm going to keep that in, I'm going to keep that in my back pocket. Maybe when all this adventure is done, we can revisit that concept. So, Brian, what did it look like from your perspective?
Yeah, well, I was equally kind of entranced because we're kind of outsiders. Claudia and myself, we kind of trawl through any data we can find on the internet. Actually, she does most of the trawling. She's brilliant at doing that. And we assembled stereo images, 3D images from all kinds of missions. And it was a kind of dream to me because, as I say, we're on the outside. Wouldn't it be great to actually collaborate with some of these guys here, the real scientists? And suddenly I have this real scientist who's sending me stuff to do, and it becomes like, it's kind of like a job, because it was a lot of hours to put in. I don't get paid and stuff, I'm an amateur, but it's joy. It's just such a joy to work on these images, and they're a bit rough to start with. It's hard, you have to align them up. You have a lot of problems with shadows, which I have to fix, and it kind of can give you headaches, but once you get it fixed, it's beautiful. You don't get no headache, you don't get no stress or whatever, and you can enjoy looking at the surface of this planet as if you were there. So you're totally instinctive, and that's what we were able to offer. But to me, it's a thrill. I mean, I get to hang out with real scientists, and it's been amazing. And we've had a lot of interchange since. The book, of course, was another whole piece of demanding stuff, because it's fine having all this information and all this wonderful data, all these images, but to make it into a book is a huge mountain to climb. A lot of people don't realise that. There's a huge difference between having a book almost ready and having a book actually ready. All the text's got to be right, everything's got to be checked, everything's got to be aligned. You get into quality of image, printing, and the whole thing. It's a long and arduous project, and we had countless Zoom calls just going through every word, every picture, every layout. And finally, you have something which I'm incredibly proud of, I must say. It means so much to me. So Dante's become a great friend, and I've learned so much in the process. I mean, I'm an amateur, like I say, and it's just, the stuff I've learned is incredible.
But Brian really brought an important perspective to the book, because quite honestly, we're scientists and we're science writers. And when we first started sending text to Brian, it was written like you would write for a scientific journal. And one of the best contributions of Brian, like you said, we went through it word by word, but he really helped craft it into an accessible book for everybody, right? This is not for scientists. This book is for everybody to experience the journey to asteroid Bennu. And he says he's an amateur, but he's really a storyteller, right? And he really brought that, how do we communicate this to a broad audience? Let's get rid of some jargon. Let's get rid of a lot of details, right? We had a lot of detail. He's like, this is just too much. This is for your science paper, not for this book. So I think the collaboration worked really well because of that, because he brought that outsider view to say, how do we tell the story that you're trying to tell?
That's good, I'm glad you said it. It's good we're talking to you, because this is your view as well. Science is not for scientists. Science should be for everybody. So it's no use putting out a book which people can't understand. Right. Why would you do that? So all the time in our journey we're saying, well, are people going to get this? Are they going to actually understand it? How do we make it clear? How do we make it uncluttered? And to me, it's a little bit like making an album, like a music album. It has to communicate, has to speak to you. And I feel that this book actually does that. It's got all the information you want. It's a very technically packed tome. It's an atlas of an asteroid, if you like. But it all tells a story, and if you read it from cover to cover, you'll get it. If you have an interest, you don't have to be a scientist to get it. That's our aim anyway.
That's right.
So we are, WFL, astrophysics.
And Bennu.
And Bennu.
Absolutely. I think when I read it, I was just blown away by both how accessible it is, but how fascinating is. I think you described it as the first of its kind, and absolutely it's something that I have never seen before, both so packed with information, but also so accessible.
That's great. I'm glad you say that.
Dante, what makes Bennu so interesting? Why is such an interesting target for human exploration?
Well, remember OSIRIS-REx is robotic exploration, right? So we're out there with a robotic probe to characterize asteroid Bennu. And we knew we wanted to go to a carbonaceous asteroid. When we were first formulating this mission, now almost 20 years ago, I was a young man without this big gray beard when this idea, started to turn into reality. And I've been interested in astrobiology and the origin of life. And I've been working with carbonaceous chondrites, which we have one of the world's greatest collections around us here at the Natural History Museum. And kind of ran into a limitation of the meteorite samples. Even when we get a sample right after it landed on Earth, it's very quickly colonized by bacteria and contaminated. So when you're trying to understand, did amino acids that make our proteins come from these asteroids, the meteorites have lots of limitations. And we needed to get to the surface of one of these and collect it and control the chain of evidence all the way into our laboratories. Bennu rose to the top of the list of our targets because it's in an accessible orbit. It's in a very Earth-like orbit. In fact, because of its orbit, it represents a potential hazard. And it is the most potentially hazardous asteroid in the solar system, with about a 0.05% chance of impacting the Earth. I like to tell everybody you don't need to go buy asteroid insurance or anything like that, because the impact, if it's going to happen, it'll be in the year 2182. Nevertheless, we need to understand these kinds of objects, how their orbits change with time, what their composition and physical properties are, in the event that humanity does need to develop a mitigation mission to prevent this natural disaster from occurring.
Thank you very much.
We have 1 minute.
Oh, all right. Then my question for both is how having access to these three images, both working for you and having access to the work of Brian and Claudia, helped shape the mission. What did it change once you had the 3D images?
Yeah, one of my favorite moments from the mission was I had a site selection board, right? A technical panel that was looking at the spacecraft and the surface and the science and everything. Could we get down and collect the material? And Brian had been working with Claudia producing these stereo images of potential sites, I think up to 50 you had actually processed at the time. And Brian sent a case of his OWL stereo viewers to the team. And I opened up the box, these beautiful red devices that you can put your cell phone on, and you can see the stereo images right on there. And I passed them around, and I said, we're just going to flip through. And all of a sudden, it became apparent. The material that we could collect was in these really small, bowl-shaped craters, which the spacecraft team was not excited about sending the spacecraft into. But immediately, I was like, we have to figure out how to get into one of these craters. And it was the stereo images that that was my wow moment, although it was more like a, oh no, kind of moment, but it was like, it became clear the challenge that we were facing.
Well, thank you both for your time, thank you both for your book, and I think we are all very excited for the return of the sample of from asteroid Bennu.
That's right, September 24th, 2023. Bits of Bennu are landing on Earth.
Amazing. Meanwhile, read all about it.
That's right. The book will take you through that whole journey. That whole story is told beautifully in this book, I think. Thank you, Brian, for that. Yeah.
Thank you both.
Yep.
Awesome, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, guys.
Well, we're done. I'll take it. And, we're going to take a little break now. I think there's no air down here. This is like in the bowels of the Natural History Museum. I hope that was entertaining.
Thank you.
And we'll see you in a few minutes, hopefully. Cheers.